Hello and welcome to episode 52 of the world's first Paul Weller fan podcast. I'm Dan Jennings, and 10 years ago I gave up my live streaming career as a radio presenter with one big regret: never getting to interview my hero, the legendary British musician Paul Weller. This podcast exists purely to solve that issue. Welcome to Desperately Seeking Paul. And this week on the podcast, I chat with Chris Green, the man behind the new Paul Weller-inspired mod-themed heartwarming film, The Pebble and the Boy, which opens in cinemas across the UK and Ireland this Friday, 27th of August. Go to facebook.com/Pebble and the Boy for all the details, showtime, cinemas near you, and for our international listeners, yes, all 5 of you, you can find out details on when it will arrive near you. So let's get into it. Chris Green, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for having me, mate. I feel really privileged to be invited on.
You're in pretty good company, right? You've seen some of the previous guests.
Yes, I have. Well, I've heard them. Nicky, Trevor, people like that. A little bit daunted, actually, mate.
God bless you. Be gentle
with me, won't you?
I'll lay off the Paxman-like questions. Yeah, that's fine. Look, we need to kick off with when you first fell in love with the music of Paul Weller, because I'm guessing it was the Jam.
It was, yeah. I was thinking about this, obviously thinking about speaking to you today, and I can't pinpoint exactly, but I think Going Underground, when that hit number one, was when I first became aware of the Jam. I would have been 13. Don't think I rushed out and bought it, but I was very aware of who they were, very aware of the older kids in school as well, the year above me, who were mods. Some of them were really, really smart guys in the year above. And I started hanging around with them, I think partly because the fact that they had Parkers with the Jam on the back. Got myself in with them, started hanging around with them. Got myself a Parker, got the badges. Yeah, so I was a bit late to the party with the Jam because I was a bit younger than the rest of the lads. But once I was in, I was in.
And it was everything from the look and feel of it to the music, the sound of the band. But the look of the band was so important. And the people who followed the band, everybody fell into that as well, didn't they?
They did. And I think that was the first time that I discovered any sort of like semblance of style. I think before that, my mum had just bought me my clothes and I wore whatever was, put out in front of me or I was told to wear. But then, I wanted a Slazenger V-neck jumper. I wanted a button-down shirt. I wanted the mod tie. I wanted the Harrington jacket. Proper went for it. But I'll tell you one thing that I must confess is that the older boys had the real nice, like M51 military Parkers. I couldn't afford one of them. So I had a green Parker, but it had, the red kids lining that I bought for a tenner off a kid at school. And so I tended to keep it zipped up so no one could actually see the lining. Yeah.
And once you're in then. So does it become like a big passion point for you, the music of the band and that look?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a bit of a poor relation, like I say, but I did start buying the stuff, bought a pair of Jam shoes, the black and whites, but it had Blakey's on the heel. So I was embarrassed walking down the street because everyone would stop and turn because they could see me coming. I remember going in the local chippy with the tile floor. And as I walked in, it was like clap, 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 clap. And everyone turned around and I must have just blushed red.
Fred Astaire, yeah.
Fred Astaire just tapped his way in, looking for fish and chips. But yeah, that was it. I was in, and I think a year later, 81, I went to my first ever gig. It was a Jam gig at Stafford Bingley Hall, with all the older lads, and the coaches used to leave from A-Town Street in Manchester. So I was allowed to go. I think I was 14 by then. I had a 4-pack cans of whatever it was, Skull. Got on the coach with all the older boys and felt like it's that coming of age and ridiculously excited.
Now, I was too young, so I'd have been around, 6? Yeah, 6 at that point that you're talking about.
Right.
So clearly too young to go to a Jam gig. But having watched the videos, and I've been in a Weller mosh pit many a time since, and there are times when those are pretty terrifying events. But when you look at the Jam gigs, man, they're pretty full on, aren't they?
It was, yeah. It was full on. We went in, some of the older lads pushed us through. I wouldn't claim to be anywhere near the stage, but maybe 15, 20 yards back. And then when they came on, I can't remember what, but when songs like Strange Town and Going Underground, just pogoing non-stop, elbows in the face, just visceral almost, no one wanting to hurt anybody, but just this explosion of passion and desire and, letting it all out and able to sing instead of being in your bedroom and singing and getting shouted at, just really let yourself go. And I remember that to that gig, I wore a button-down shirt, a tie, an Harrington jacket and a Parker. So literally half an hour into the gig, I was just out on my feet, sweating profusely, dizzy, lightheaded. But yeah, I'll never forget it. And a mate of ours came to the gig. He wasn't a massive Jam fan, but he liked some of the stuff. I don't know what happened during the gig. It went a bit quiet and they were swapping guitars over. And Paul said, any requests? And people were shouting, Tube Station, this, that, and the other. And it all went quiet. And my mate meant to shout, that's entertainment. And he shouted, that's education. It all just went quiet and we all just looked at him and was like, uh-oh.
Oh, amazing. But the thing is, not soon after, so you discover this band that you then love. Not soon after, it's game over, it's all done.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I came late to the party. 81 was the first time I saw them twice in 82 at the Apollo. Then, pulled the plug, and I was gutted. December 82, I was devastated, like all my mates. But then 6 months later, Speak Like a Child came out and it was all right again. It was all good.
You loved the Style Council. You loved everything about them too, yeah?
Well, I remember in our common room at school when the chart was coming out, and it's as though everyone wanted to hate it. We're Jam fans, we're loyal to the Jam. We're not going to be into Weller and the Style Council. And I was like, yeah. Who's the Style Council? What's all this about? It'll be rubbish. As soon as I heard it, my heart swelled and I was just like, wow. And the video, it looks amazing. It looks so cool. Yeah, that was it. I was off again on another journey, but this one right from the start, which was great. I felt like I belonged a little bit more then.
We should dig into your film because I've had a sneak preview and it's lovely. So Pebble and the Boy, written and directed by yourself. And the love of Weller, the Jam, the Style Council floods throughout the entire film. And we'll dip into the story of how you've come about making this film and then touch on points in terms of the Jam and the Style Council as well. But when did you first get the idea of creating something like this?
It sounds a bit of a cliche, but it's when I met Paul after a gig in Cork, 2009. I'd been writing for about 9 years then. I'd done some little bits and bobs for TV, for Channel 4 and Sky. And there's that old adage in writing, write what you know. Me and my wife went to see Paul in Cork at this marquee. It was a great gig. And the very next morning we were at the airport and I said to my wife, do you know what? I've got this real feeling that I'm going to meet Paul. And she was like, oh yeah, whatever. She said, look, one, he'd have got up early and gone. 2, he'll be in a different part of the airport. He won't be mingling with the likes of you. She went off to Marks and Spencer's to buy a sandwich and I was sat there and I had my phone out. I just really had this feeling, Dan, honestly, that I was going to see him. Like something out of an American movie, he turned the corner and coming walking towards me and he looked absolutely on point. His hair was perfect. He was dressed impeccably and it was like slow motion. And I don't get nervous in front of people that I admire. Like I've worked with loads of, biggish name actors and stuff like that. And I went over to him and he had his back to me. He was getting a bottle of water. And what I meant to say was, Paul, that was a great gig last night. But it came out, thanks for last night. I was like, and it just came, and he just turned around and went, I'm going red just thinking about it.
Brilliant.
And he said, oh yeah, not a problem. I said, could I get a photo with you? And he's like, yeah, no problem, mate. So I took what is the worst selfie in history. Honestly, Dan, I'll send it to you. It's literally half of Paul's face and my ear. And that's all you can see of me. It's just like my ear and maybe a little bit of my eye. And I looked at it and I went, oh, it's not the best. And he went, no, it's not the best, mate. And then I looked up and my wife was stood there and she was like frozen. So I threw the phone to my wife and she went, what are you giving it me for? So she's holding it, her hands are shaking. By this time, a crowd is starting to gather. And she took another photo, which was tons better than mine. And then I thought, don't take advantage. I said, thanks, Paul, for your time. Appreciate it. And off he went. So then I'm sat on the plane flying back over to Manchester and I just started to develop this idea. Similar to your podcast, it was called Finding Paul. That was the name of the story. And it was about a kid discovering his dad. And his dad's obviously not Paul Weller, but that was the sort of like intent, that his dad was like Weller and he was cool. And that was the basis of the story. And then by the time I'd landed, I was already scribbling notes and sent it off to a producer friend of mine who said that they liked it and would like to see a script. And that was middle of 2009. We developed the script. He got an outline to Paul at the time, asked me to do a 1-page outline to see if Paul was supportive. And I think by support at that stage, it was that he didn't hate it. Yeah. And we counted that as support. But it came back that he liked the idea and he was supportive and we just didn't know what that meant at the time. And this producer got so close to getting the film made at a really big budget level, and he was really excited. And then it all just faded away. You know, we were doing this for like 2 or 3 years, and then the producer went off to be a football agent. So I was left sat there with this script, didn't really know what to do with it. Then I started making other films, and then I'm directing a film and making short films, won a couple of awards and stuff like that. And then I just went back to it, and I thought, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do another mod film. You know, it's however many years since Quadrophenia, you know, get it done. So just blindly just wandered into raising the money and making it.
Well, we'll come on to the raising the money is great, because I think also the amount of fans who joined you along this, you know, for this journey to make this happen. But it's essentially the story of this lad, John Parker, who's 19 from Manchester, embarks on a journey to Brighton, the spiritual home of the mods, and the discovery of this Lambretta scooter that's left to him by his dad. Yeah. And you can feel all the way through it. You talk about the mod culture, and we talked about the fashion earlier. It does feel like a love letter to that world in a way, but also importantly features the music of Paul and the Jam as well. So, you know, kicks off 5 minutes into the film, and we're straight into Saturday's Kids.
So he's wandered into his dad's man cave, you know, to feel closer to his dad. You know, he's got the Weller posters on the wall, the Jam, the Star Council, a load of scooter pictures and stuff. Yeah, and because this kid doesn't know what it is to be a mod, literally sits there reading the A to Z of mods. And we can sense in that scene that he's starting to think, oh, this is exciting, you know. He's reading about, you know, Brighton and Eastbourne and 1964 and mods versus rockers, and we get a sense that he's like, oh, I'm up for this. Yeah. I'd like to find out a little bit more, yeah. And we set the film up that he wants to go and find that. But of course, it's a modern day, so you're not going to find that. You're not going to end up brawling with some leather-clad rocker outside a pub in Brighton. But, you know, we do play with that theme because he does meet a group of rockers, and we have those funny little scenes where he's nervous of them because he's got his dad's Parker on and he thinks bad things are going to happen, and they just think he's really this funny little kid, you know, on this journey.
Well, you talk about funny. I mean, there's lots of humour in it. One bit being the Lambretta. I've seen these on pictures, but never seen one in the flesh, where you've got all the little rear view mirrors all over the thing. Did you have one of these as a youngster?
No, we didn't have one. And I must admit, selfishly, I wrote this film thinking, do you know what? If we get one as part of the production, I'll keep it. And I have, you know, It's in the mate's garage at the moment. We originally bought the wrong scooter. I bought an LI 150 and then discovered that the film insurance wouldn't cover our young actor to ride it. So I had to sell that one, and a real nice guy called Ian Dignam bought it off us. And then I went out and bought the LI 125, which you see in the film, off a lovely mod called Ronnie Hurst. You know, I think he had tears in his eyes when he parted with it. He said, look after her. I said, mate, in 2 days' time, this scooter's getting trashed on Brighton Beach. And he was like, no. And I always remember when we shot the scenes on Brighton Beach, where the scooter gets trashed, that people on the Facebook page went mental. You can't treat her like that. How dare you? It was like, whoa, it's a film, guys. You know, it's a film. But it got a bit of a bashing. But yeah, it's a lovely scooter, absolute swine to ride. You know, I've ridden scooters, and that one is very temperamental. And our lead actor, Patrick McNee, had his work cut out with that.
Did it have all the mirrors on it when you bought it?
Yeah, when it came like that. So the first time we unleashed it was in Brighton, because we shot the Brighton stuff before we shot the Manchester stuff. So we wheeled out the van. It was beautiful summer 2018. All the mods were there, South Coast mods and North Lane mods, who agreed to come down and, you know, be extras. And then I pulled out a hammer and started smashing the mirrors in, because at the start of the story, when he inherits the scooter off his dad, you know, it's been in an accident. Honestly, grown men were like, what are you doing? How do you do? But yeah, it's still like that. It still looks like it's been in the wars, but it's a great scooter. It looks good. It looks brilliant from 20 yards away. You get too close, though. Yeah.
How many mirrors has it got on it? Do you know?
I think it's got 18, 22, something like that. And the lights and everything, yeah. And it's got the whip things at the back with the foxtails on and stuff like that. I snuck a little Manchester City badge on it as well. Nice. Yeah, 1967 LI 125 it is.
So the idea is he's going to Brighton for this Paul Weller gig, and takes a little detour to Woking as well, which is a lovely touch.
There's a few little, what Universal Music said to us, look, you know, we'll work with you on this, because Paul and Nicky Well has been so supportive to us. And Den Davis, I don't know if you know Den.
Curated the exhibition, the Jam exhibition.
Absolutely. So Den and Nicky have been a fantastic support to the film. And then obviously Universal were dealing with us with the music, and they said, don't make it a massive homage to Paul. And we're like, okay, yeah, we won't. And they did rein it in a bit. But there are some subtle things in there. There's some Jam lyrics, and obviously finding the tickets. His dad was a big Jam fan. We've not gone too far. It's not a sycophantic, love letter to Paul, but the film is inspired by him, and it's inspired by his music and the effect that that's had on me and my life. Because similarly to John in our story, I was 15 when my dad died very suddenly. I was a Jam fan at the time, and I just immersed myself in the Jam's music, especially the angry stuff where Weller's at his spitting angriest, and that was like a support for me, and I could vent it in the bedroom, ranting and raging on my own and stuff like that. We've tried not to go too far, and I think Paul's seen the film and he likes it, so
well done. Well, yeah, and we talked about the support of the fans. So when that producer pulls out and you're left on your own, you turn to crowdfunding to the fans to kind of support you. So how did that come about? How did you get that idea, and how did you make that work?
I'd seen it on similar networks, and I'd already done it for a film I'd made called Broken Glass. I think I raised £3,500 to make a short film. And I thought, looking at the fan base, and this is the brilliant thing about, social media, there's a lot of downsides to it. But for mods, older mods and scooter boys and girls and fans of different bands, we can all come together in a network. And I thought there's a real big audience out there. So I thought I'll take the plunge, see if we can raise 10 grand, go out and make a 20-minute promo and cut a trailer out of it and take it to Universal Pictures and Altitude and places like that, and hopefully blow the socks off and say, this is what we've done, this is what the film will look like, rather than just sending a script. And we did it, and, we raised, I think, £11,500 very, very quickly, which was brilliant, and we gave away perks, badges, T-shirts, posters and stuff like that. Yeah, then we went out and shot it with some actor friends of mine, and we did 2 days in Brighton, 2 days in Manchester. And I think up to date, it's had about 600,000 views, I think, over the years. So we knew we had something, and we knew we had a fan base. So we built this package. The love for the film has been absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of people wanting to see it. It's not Quadrophenia 2. I know that The Sun ran a feature on it about 18 months ago saying Quadrophenia 2 is coming, The Pebble and the Boy, and I was just like, whoa. So we did a disclaimer on the Facebook page, because it's not Quadrophenia. We don't go anywhere near Quadrophenia in it. There's one tiny, tiny mention of Quadrophenia, and it's very much an if you know sort of thing. I don't know if you can guess.
I didn't notice it. No, I'm now going to have to watch it again to figure it out.
So our two leads come out of the shop and they go down a certain alley in Brighton.
Okay.
So there you go. So that's that was the only nod to Quadrophenia, because what I didn't want was people to be turned off by the film and say, you're just making Quadrophenia 2. Because it's not. It's a million miles away. It's set in the present day, and it's reflective. It's looking back, on what it was like for his dad and his dad's mates, back in the early 80s.
The cast that you've got is fantastic as well. So you mentioned Patrick McNamee, who's John, the young kid. Sasha Parkinson's Nikki, is that right?
Yes.
She's fabulous as well.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Yeah. Such an amazing actress. And that role that she plays, Nikki, she's just absolute scene stealer, isn't she? She's just wonderful. Yeah, she's great.
She's brilliant. And you can tell comic timing wise, she's terrific and set for big things after this as well. But you've also got Patsy Kensit, who's in the film but also associate producer, and Manny from Stone Roses. So how did that go?
When I first started researching the film, I went down to Brighton in about 2010, 2011 on my own for 2 days in a B&B, wandered around on the beach, getting a feel for everything. And I went in the famous mod shop, Jump the Gun, in the middle of Brighton. They sell a lot of mod clothes. As I walked in, there was a couple of people in and they were going out, and I got chatting to the owners, and they said, I'm making this film. I've come down. I'd love to film in here if I ever got it off the ground. They were like, yeah, absolutely. The lovely people. And then Manny walks in with his mate, and he's like, I told you to come down here. I told you that I'd get here eventually. And I won't swear, but the guy behind the counter said, "Effing hell, is it Mank Day in here today?" So obviously, me being a man, Manny being a man, we got chatting. We shared a little changing room up at the back. He was trying on a two-tone suit. I was trying on some shirts. So I was like, "Oh, that looks nice." And he was like, "Oh, that looks nice." So we just got really chatting. And I told him about the film. And Manny said to me, "If you ever get it off the ground, I'll be involved." And 10 years later, he walks on set and we did it, you know.
Wow,
and he was just, you know, true to his word. And he's so cool in that scene, you know. He's not an actor. He's a rock and roll star. Well, I think he does a good job.
I won't give anything away, but it's a lovely little moment with him, I have to say. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, it's cool. Very cool.
And what about Patsy Kenzie? How did she become involved?
Patsy's just a beautiful person, wonderful actress, so good to have on set. You know, Patsy was very gracious. She knew it was a little film, but, you know, she loved the Style Council. She likes the era. We got chatting. I invited her to come down. Kate Plantin, our wonderful casting director, sorted it out. Patsy came up. We went and did a fitting for some really nice 60s influenced mod clothes. Got on like a house on fire. She agreed to come back, came and work with us with the Ronnie character, her husband, played by Ricky Harnett, who fans of Rise of the Foot Soldier will know really, really well. She came down, was just a delight, great actress. She knows her stuff. And she plays a cougar in the film, you know. And poor John, yeah. She almost gets claws into him. Let's not give too much away.
No, exactly. And there's a twist in the middle, which I didn't see coming as well, which is always nice. It kind of takes you off on a different direction to maybe the one you were expecting to. The other thing we should touch on is the music. So I mentioned the Jam kicking things off very early on, but they take these scooters off to Brighton and we're kicking to Speak Like a Child, Solid Bond in Your Heart. And there's also a lovely link to my guest from last week's podcast, Aziz Ibrahim, and the track Middle Road. Tell me all about that.
So first things first, Aziz Ibrahim is probably one of the coolest men in Britain. I know Aziz through a mutual friend. One day me and Aziz were chatting about the film and I was talking about Paul and, you know, needing to contact him. And Aziz says, "Well, I can sort that out for you." And so Aziz gave me Claire's telephone number, Claire Moon being Paul's assistant. And I rang her out the blue, told her what we were doing. She was lovely. She always has been. Sent her the promo. And then Aziz very kindly agreed to let us use his track, which is Middle Road, which is, I listen to it all the time, the extended version of it. So it's Aziz, Steve White, Paul Weller and Manny, like a little super group.
Yeah.
And the song is that Aziz wrote, you know, and they all got together and they jammed on it down at Black Barn Studios, I believe. And then Aziz said I could use it in the film. And I was like, "Oh, thank you very much."
Oh, that's brilliant. What a great story. Aziz was brilliant, actually, I have to say, on the podcast. What a lovely guy. We had such an amazing reaction to that one as well. We should also talk about The Pebble and the Boy. So the title of the film, taken from the track that is from the album As Is Now, for the Paul Weller album. Was that something that you always wanted to use as the title for the film?
Yeah, very much so. When I went to see Paul in Cork, I think he was touring that album at the time and I'd listened to it a lot. It was an emotional song for me because, you know, there's references to a boy being a man and a boy and a man and a pebble. And it just reminded me of my relationship with my dad, because my relationship with my dad was idyllic, you know, and I only knew him for 15 years, but it was great. He was a truck driver. He used to take me all over the country in the summer holidays and stuff. And, you know, and it's quite upsetting sometimes when you're writing and you get emotional and stuff like that. But then I knew that was the title. You know, it's not a massively commercial title. You know, it's not The Modern World. It's not smashing that mod thing in someone's faces. But I think it really works and people love the song and I love the song. Yeah, and I was really grateful when Paul said we could use it.
No, it works really nice because the film to me is so gentle as well. It's such a lovely story and a really heartwarming story that you're right, The Modern World or those kind of titles from other Weller songs wouldn't work. I think it's perfect. And the Pebbles, obviously Brighton Beach kicks in as well because they're still yet to import sand from anywhere from what I can work out.
Yeah, you go to Brighton Beach and you think, oh, I'll shoot this scene of the lad and the girl walking hand in hand, and you think it's going to be like Hawaii with waves lapping, but you can't walk on that beach. You know, it's a fight to get 10 yards. So you can't shoot anything that's really romantic and sensual, you know. Or you can't do a from here to eternity scene with them lay on the beach and the waves lapping at the toes. Just too uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's always the bottom of the list. If we take the kids to the beach, I've got young kids, 6 and 4. Take the kids to the beach. That's the last. They don't want to go to that beach. That beach is rubbish. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the music's great. The story's great. You mentioned North Lane and South Coast mods as well, who turn up as extras. Are those competing factions? Are they different? Obviously, they're different areas of the South Coast, but are they friends?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I couldn't tell you who was in, which person was in what group, but they seem to be very much aligned and so lovely. There's a guy called Darren Hart, among others, who came down every day, and we were a small budget film. We didn't have money for a scooter technician. And believe me, that scooter didn't want to start any day. Darren used to come in on his scooter from about an hour's ride in from where he lives. And he was on set every single day. And every time that scooter broke down, he was on his hands and knees and fixed it and got it running again. And he was also our stunt rider as well. So he's in it doing some of the stunts. So the ride down onto the beach and all the high speed stuff is a guy called Darren Hart. And he was just an absolute blessing, honestly, to have around. So those guys down there, Volks Bar, which, is a bit of a mecca for mods, they were great. That was our unit base. We filmed out of there. Costume was in there. Makeup was in there. We ate in there. They really looked after us. Fantastic.
I mean, it's incredible that Paul has this influence over and obviously the mod culture isn't just Paul Weller. It's important to say that, right? But he does feel like he's such a big figurehead of that movement.
He is. When online you see the argument, Steve Marriott's the original mod father. May well have been. I just call him the governor. For me, Weller's just the governor. I don't call him the mod father because I think it's an affectionate title, but for me, he's the man. So he's just always the governor for me because, everything he does, he's just cool. I put a picture up on my Facebook the other day. Paul was in London last week with Mark Baxter and people like that, I think. He just had a white shirt on and a grey 3-button suit jacket. And I just put on my Facebook, find me a cooler 62-year-old and I will show my ass in Topshop's window. and he just is.
There's a challenge.
I know, yeah. And people were coming back and saying, David Bowie. And I was like, yeah, living. Bowie was cool, but Weller's, for me, the coolest man on the planet, I sound like I'm fawning now, don't I? Honestly, Paul, if I meet you at a screening, I won't be like this.
But the music is still an important part of your lives and the lives of so many of us. Yeah.
The guy just gets better and better. He's like a fine wine, isn't he? Just, it's not snarling, it's not political, it's not anger. Well, there is an anger there, but it's a simmering anger and there's a beauty. And Weller's last couple of albums reflect, I think, a time and a sense of being of where he is now. And I think for us, as well as 50-odd-year-olds and 60-odd-year-olds, a lot of us are like that and we appreciate it. But I was just listening to the album today, Shades of Blue, True, Glad Times. They're just phenomenal tracks. Yeah. As soon as I heard Gravity from the, which album is it on?
True Meanings, yeah.
I said to my wife, listen to this. She said, why? I said, that's my funeral song, love. When I go, don't forget, that needs to be played. Like, yeah, okay. But he's a big part of a lot of people's lives. Yours, Dan, you've created a podcast. And we all know why.
Have I mentioned it?
And it's going to happen.
The thing that's really interesting is the amount of people who are willing and able and happy to come on and chat. And the list of the amounts of people who want to kind of, are happy to come on is incredible. I don't know many artists who'd be like that with, where people just be like, yeah, I'd love to talk about my love of that artist,
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd be, at our age, we'd be embarrassed, but we still... we think we're too old for that. I wouldn't walk around with a football shirt with the name of a young footballer on the back. But, I wouldn't do the same with Weller. But he is a special, special guy, and that's why we all love him. And that's why we're all still with him and still following him. And I must say, Weller's music features heavily in our film. And for a little film, I feel absolutely blessed to have got those tracks and from the support from Paul and Nicky and Den. But we've also got some other brilliant songs in there. We've got some new bands. There's Electric Stars, which are a mod band. Sammy Harris, a singer-songwriter. There's that beautiful scene where John is a montage on the pier by himself. Sammy Harris wrote that. And we've got The Chords and Secret Affair. Yeah. If you don't like the film, folks, you'll love the soundtrack.
We should cut to the chase. When are people going to be able to see the movie? So
August, we keep saying it every year, and then the pandemic hit and it put us back and we had to go back and reshoot stuff. But it is 100% being released this August. I spoke to my producer before it came on and he was like, don't say too much. Don't commit to any dates because things will shift and change. And I said, well, people are waiting for it. I need to tell. It's bank holiday in August. It's a big mod bank holiday in August. So without saying too much, then, digital release DVD release around the same time, and cinemas as well. So we're going to be doing a bit of a tour around the country, myself, and if we go to cities where the cast are, drag them in, do some Q&As and stuff like that.
Oh, lovely.
But definitely a screening in Brighton, definitely a screening in Manchester, and then we're gonna take it on the road, and hopefully, fingers crossed, people like it and don't expect Quadrophenia.
Well, no, it's brilliant, man. I mean, congratulations, because that sounds like a hell of a journey to get to this point as well.
It has, yeah. It's been full on, but and part of me just wants it out there now. Get it out there, let people watch it, let them hopefully enjoy it, and hopefully it ticks the boxes, because I know there's a lot of people, I get messages from Australia, America, Italy, Japan. When can we see this? When's it coming? And I'm just and we've got our wonderful sponsors who supported us. 80s Casual Classics provided all the clothes, all the cool stuff, all the pretty green, the feeler and everything. And you'll see that these so the kids that he meets up with, that John meets up with, he meets up with Nicky and Max being Patsy Kensit's son. They both ride Scamadis. So Scamadi are modern versions of Lambrettas,
right?
But without the hassle of having to kickstart them. So without 80s Casual Classics and Scamadi, and we wouldn't have got the film made. So I need to make sure that there's a mention there.
There's one thing I wrote down, and I can't think for the life of me what it meant, and I've literally just put Sean Sexton, Weller fan, and I don't know what that means.
Oh yeah, right, okay. Sean and his mate Julian Clapton. Ever since I didn't know them. They're from down Leicester way, Loughborough. And they came up, and when we did the promo up in Manchester, they came up and DJ'd it for us. And we showed the promo to 200 people. And they've both been massive supporters of the film. Julian has got a speaking part in the film. Sean pops up as an extra. I know that they went down to Woking, not last week, the week before. Neither of them mentioned it. And then there's pictures of them sat on Weller's old Mercedes.
I saw that.
Yeah. So Sean and Julian's mate bought that Mercedes. They went down to Woking a couple of weeks ago because Steve Carver, who's Paul's really, really good friend, took them on a bit of a tour. And they ended up at Black Barn and meeting Paul and sitting on the Merc with him with these really cool pictures. And I was like, what? No invite, nothing.
Yeah, Tufty's coming on the podcast, and I said to him we should do an episode where he takes me on that same tour. That would be a really cool episode, wouldn't it?
I've met Steve once. We're friends on Facebook. Lovely, lovely guy. As is everyone who's associated with Paul. Yeah. Stone Foundation, Drew Hipson, who does the Icon magazines, Derek D'Souza, who does the photographs. We're all there just mixing about and just enjoying Weller for what he is, and for as long as that lasts, which I hope is another 40 years.
Fingers crossed, man. Hey, this has been so lovely, Chris. I have two final questions for you. You may know what's coming if you've listened to the podcast. You're allowed one Paul Weller song for the rest of your life. It can be the Jam, the Style Council, or solo. Which one's it going to be?
Oh, wow. It would be Gravity. Yeah, definitely. A few years ago, it'd have been something different. It'd have been Town Called Malice or Eating Rifles. But Gravity, for me, when you played it live from the Barbican, I cried. I'm a 53-year-old man. I sat there, watched it, and I cried. It just makes me feel so emotional, and his voice on it is perfect. And I think the way it makes you feel is perfect. But that'd be the song for me.
Good choice. And that song's been kicking around for a while, hasn't it? It was one that he couldn't kind of find a home for until the other songs from True Meanings came out of him and the other people that he worked with. But yeah, it's a lovely song.
Oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful. There's so many songs that you could pick, but that one for me. I mean, Eating Rifles is my phone ringtone, but yeah, Gravity is something special. Yeah.
Now, the purpose of this podcast not only is to talk about Paul with people like yourself and talk about people's amazing work, but it's obviously to be able to meet Paul, to have that interview, that conversation that I never managed in my radio career. If and when it happens, what should I chat to him about? Is there a question you think I should ask?
Wow. You've put me right on the spot there. What's the one question you should ask Paul? Yes, Paul. When is Chris Green going to direct your next video? That's what you should ask him, Dan. Because that's my ambition. Yours is to meet Paul and do a podcast just like we're doing this now. My ambition is to direct a video for one of Paul's singles.
Nice.
That's what you should ask him.
That's a great one.
Let's make it happen.
Very good question. Hey, Chris, good luck with the film. Well done once again. It's a fabulous piece of work, my friend. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me to come on. I really, really appreciate it, Dan. All the best to you, mate.
My thanks once again to Chris Green, The Pebble and the Boys in cinemas from this Friday. You can find out more on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Pebble and the Boy. And if it's not on at your local cinema, then ask them why and get in touch. Next up on the podcast, this is another one of those episodes where I just have to pinch myself as I'm joined by the man who created the jam with Paul Weller back in the early 70s. Before leaving the band ahead of them signing their deal with Polydor. The magnificent Steve Brooks is my very special guest on the next episode. We'll hear about those early days of the best effing band in the world, his friendship with Paul Weller, and playing together live and on each other's albums in recent years. Plus exclusive news about Steve's new album that's out very soon, which features Paul and his bandmate Ben Cordelia. You're in for a real treat on the next episode, so make sure you subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts, leave a review, and do share on social media. If you fancy it, you can also buy me a coffee and find information about my guests in the show notes for this podcast. Get in touch on Twitter @WellerFanPod or on Instagram and Facebook. It's Paul Weller Fan Podcast. I'll see you next week.